I'm Aaron, and I've watched too much Star Trek.
And I'm Clara, and I've watched none. These are the voyages of the Friendship Enterprise.
Its continuing mission
to boldly go where I've never gone before.
And we're here for our first episode-centered episode.
Well said.
Thank you. Where we watch The Man Trap and Charlie X.
CX.
Yes, Charlie X CX.
Charlie X CX Brat Enterprise.
Oh my god. We'll get to that episode. He is Brat, though.
Yeah,
just not in the way that. Yeah.
Anyway.
Not in the way that the pop culture refers to Brat these days.
Yeah, my first 2 Star Trek episodes.
Before we get into business, how do you feel?
I feel happy. I feel great. I feel very net positive towards Star Trek.
Wow. This is like a LinkedIn review of Star Trek.
Yup.
I feel very net positive about this.
Yeah, I loved it. Charmed, entertained, delighted.
I heard a rumor that you actually watched the 3rd episode, right?
I did.
Wow. Okay,
but we won't talk about that yet.
But I'm saying you do appear to be genuine.
Yeah, so much so that I'm zooming ahead.
Is it the primary colors? Is it the bright?
It's definitely the primary colors. Much like a child or a baby, I am just drawn to the colors on my screen.
We will talk about that.
Okay.
For sure. I think we should. I don't know.
Great.
The color scheme is great. So The Man Trap. Do you know what day it originally aired?
Absolutely not. I know it was 1966.
Yeah, you are right. It was September the 8th.
Oh, a great day.
And for our purposes, we thought a fun little exercise would be to look at the front page of the New York Times for the air date of every episode.
Yep. What was going on?
What was going on in the world. And so I got it pulled up right now. Got a couple interesting things on here. I mean, they're not really that interesting.
What was happening?
All shit was happening. Apparently a ship caught fire in New York Harbor. So that was the big front line. Also, Franklin Roosevelt Jr. was going to try to run for governor, and he looks a lot like FDR, which is not a great thing.
Drag his ass.
Sorry. But generally the news is like a lot about like Red China.
Sure.
And the civil rights kind of era kicking off.
Sure.
And some little hints of Vietnam. We have a private who got a 3-year jail term for his refusal to go to Vietnam.
Okay. Anything about Star Trek?
0 things.
Great. So, made quite a splash.
Well, I did look up the critical reception of the first episode, and it says that most critics were baffled.
Baffled.
By what they saw.
I can understand.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't really look like anything else on TV at the time.
A thing I learned was this wasn't actually supposed to be the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
I did do a little Googling of my own. I'm not watching this in a complete vacuum. This was not supposed to be the first episode.
It was not.
The first episode was supposed to be an episode called The Cage. It was rejected by NBC.
Pilot,
and then it was kind of subsumed into The Menagerie,
Correct.
Which is a 2-part episode that will be later in season 1.
Correct.
So, can't wait.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, the 3rd episode you watched was the 2nd pilot. It was supposed to be the first episode.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, right. The studio thought that one would be too confusing for some reason.
Sure.
So they went with this one, which is interesting because I did want to talk a little about like how this episode introduced us to the characters a bit.
Yeah, we can do that.
At some point, we want to start there.
I mean, it introduced me to the characters.
It did. I think it works, even though it's not really like a traditional pilot, right?
Though I have known these characters.
I was going to say, how much? Okay.
I have known these characters
since
by
Futurama.
name since before Futurama.
Okay.
And I know, right?
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy is Spock.
Dr. Spock.
Right.
Famous author of the Baby Book.
Yes.
Yes.
Famously. I know that William Shatner is Captain Kirk and Sulu. Like, I know all, right? These are all names that have been floating around in my head. I just haven't seen them in action. Sure. I don't know, a really fun fact that I found that's probably not fun to you because you probably know it because you have the Encyclopedia of Star Trek wide open in front of you. Do you know how old Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner were when they were shooting these first episodes?
I actually do not know. I know Leonard Nimoy is the oldest, though.
They were both 35.
Oh, they're both 35.
When the first episode premiered. That doesn't mean necessarily mean that, okay. So they were in their early 30s when they were filming these, which is bonkers to me because Leonard Nimoy does not look like a 33-year-old. Yeah. Nor does William Shatner.
No, but definitely not Nimoy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looks a lot older all the time.
Way older. And I don't even recognize William Shatner. It does not look like him to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a big TJ Hooker fan, so that's how you recognize.
Yeah.
No, what would be the thing you like Boston Legal? Like what was the thing you would have seen him in?
I don't know.
Like commercials.
I don't know, just kind of like all over the place, right? Because he just shows up in things. Like
Ben Folds.
I'm pretty sure he's been in episodes of 30 Rock. He was in an episode, a couple episodes of Psych. Like he's just in, right? He's kind of like a character actor now.
Yeah.
And so he's just in, right? He's just like in and around television, and so I think that's how I know who he is.
Yeah, looks a lot different.
But he looks really different. Mm-hmm. Like Leonard Nimoy looks
pretty much the same.
Yeah. George Takei looks like exactly the same, younger, but the same, right? Yeah. Like he looks really very different.
Well, I'm sure when we get to the movies, we'll have conversations about the many hair pieces of William Shatner.
Incredible! I can't wait.
But so that can account for some of the difference.
So those are my first impressions that these people look too old to be 30 or like mid 30s.
That's a fair one. So you point out that they have the encyclopedia out.
Yeah.
Should we give a brief synopsis?
Yeah, let's synopsis the Man Trap.
Let's start with the Man Trap. We'll go in order here. So the Man Trap, episode number 6 in production order. Okay. The first episode to air was written by George Clinton Johnson, directed by Mark Daniels.
Great.
The star date, which as you will realize is a number that's completely made up each episode, was 1513.1. A salt-eating creature that can disguise itself in any form stalks the Enterprise crew. Although the 6th episode produced in the original series, the Man Trap was the first to air. Okay, blah, blah. I was just saying the same thing. But basically, Salt Vampire.
Salt Vampire.
Which, shout out to, we played Monster of the Week, and I ruined it for everyone when I called the monster a Salt Vampire.
Yep, but that's exactly what it is. It's a Salt Vampire. Sucks all the salt right out of you.
Yeah, it's an insane plot device, but I'm kind of okay.
If I were a vampire, I'd certainly be a salt vampire. I'm sorry. Yum, yum, yum. Potato chips, please.
This begs the question, is there an MSG vampire?
Oh, hell yeah. There absolutely is. There's gotta be.
Creeping around Chinese restaurants.
Yep. Waiting.
Oh, it's me. Anyway. Well, why don't we start? Because I was watching it the other day, and I sent you a picture of it on the TV. And your response was, look at those primary colors. So why don't we start with the set design and the color palette of this episode? Because, like, the crazy thing is, like, we're not that far into the color TV era either, is the other thing. I feel like they use color really well.
Yes, they do.
But since you're new, what is your initial impression about, like, just, like, the look of the show?
I love it.
What do you love about it?
I'm really obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I love that it's, like, production quality, quite low.
Oh, yeah, the budget's very low.
But, like, I don't know, it's, like, a candy store, right?
Yeah.
It's, like, so bright and colorful. And, right, everyone's got their bright velour shirts on. Velour. Damn, they made a ton of money off the Star Trek costumes. All those shirts are velour. All the little dresses. Right, you just want to watch it because it's like all the colors that you love. It looks really appealing, even though as a person watching this show in 2024, right, television is like, evolved into like huge production values, et cetera. I can watch things that like visually are more sophisticated, but can I watch things that are like visually that sort of joyful and appealing? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I love practical effect work in general, so you know my proclivity is to like, even if it looks cheesy, I'm a bigger fan.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love it. I have no qualms no qualms with like the kind of low budget.
Yeah, super low budget
production. Like this, it truly does not faze me. If anything, I think it's more charming.
Yeah.
Right, that plant. There's
the talking plant.
There's like the scene right where what's her name, Janice, like goes in to like talk to Sulu, and like the plant is clearly just a hand, like in a plant costume,
like a fake plant,
but it's like they're not even trying to make it look like a plant. It just looks like a hand in a like weird fuzzy glove. Yeah. But I really love it. I'm very drawn to it. I love bright, colorful things.
Yeah, I do too.
I think most people do. I think that's a thing that like television production studios take note.
Yeah.
People want like bright, colored television.
Please light things up. Why is everything dark?
Why is everything dark? But also things aren't colorful. There are a few shows I can think of. Say we will about, whatever your opinions on Mindy Kaling are. The shows that she produces are so colorful. Like, and they make me want to watch them because I'm just like, again, it's like walking into a candy store for your eyes. Like, you just want to watch things that are bright and colorful and kind of like thoughtfully colorful.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just like color for color's sake. It's like actually thinking about how color is kind of working together to enhance the visuals. And I don't know if this is what they were doing with Star Trek, but I think it works. I think that if they weren't thinking about it, like accidentally it happened. Again, I think it's because primary colors just like work together.
Yeah,
we like them really and they look nice together, but
I don't know. I love how bright it is.
Yeah, I do too.
Which if we ever get to Discovery, which I don't know if we will, that's many, many series and movies away. My main complaint with that show is it's so damn dark.
Okay.
So
it falls prey to another kind of trap. Not a man trap.
Right.
A TV trap.
Yeah, it's like every movie wants, or every TV show wants to be like The Dark Knight now, which is frustrating. But yeah, I love the look of it. I think it looks great, even though, as you said, it's like cheap, but it looks really cool. Like, I love the planet. The sky is like that crazy, like, like tangerine color.
Yes. And the rocks that are just like clearly like styrofoam.
Yes, they're definitely like,
yeah, fantastic. No notes.
Yeah, no notes.
No notes. Right. Physically or like metaphorically, I have no notes.
Yeah, I assume they had, it's all about design. Like the set design work. And the color use, like they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
For sure. And we'll see some crazier stuff.
Great. Can't wait.
As it goes along. But I think Charlie X is a little more subdued. Just because they don't like go down to a planet when they're on the ship most of it. So we'll get to Charlie X.
That's right.
Okay, so generally, do you want to give our general thoughts on the episode? I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think it works really well. Like the plotting, it moves efficiently. I hadn't seen this episode in a long time, and I was surprised by how well it moves structurally and narratively for like a first episode. I thought the way they'd use the monster was interesting too. And I don't know if you had thoughts about this, but sort of like it's a Monster of the Week episode, right?
Yeah.
But the sort of moral questions around what to do with the monster are maybe a little more complicated than I would expect. Like it's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode. I don't know if you got that vibe from it at all.
I've also never watched Twilight Zone.
Right. So it feels really like
William Shatner
thing on the wing.
Yeah.
We'll have a bonus episode where you watch just that episode. I also think, and maybe we can get to this when we talk about the characters more, but like Uhura's introduction is wild to me.
Yeah,
she's like
really
flirting
weird.
with Spock on the bridge.
Yes.
And we could talk about that, but
I'm glad you
give
brought
me
that
your
up.
general thoughts first.
I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Was basically my only thought. Was like, okay, I know, right? Again, I don't know a ton about Star Trek, but I know that it was like very progressive and it was like doing things that other television shows would have never dared to do. And I also know that like Uhura is a really like progressive character, right? Probably one of the most progressive characters like in her time. it's still talked about.
Yeah.
And the fact that, right, her first introduction is her just, like, flirting with Spock.
I know.
But I also think that it's, like, a perfect introduction to her character because it's, like, is she flirting with Spock, like, because she, like, is, like, into him? Or is she flirting with Spock because she's, like, sort of playful and she's, like, knows that, like, like, he's not gonna, like, react to it, and she's just trying to get a reaction, right? Because we see, I don't want to spoil too much the next episode, but right in the next episode, she has that kind of weird, like, interlude where she sings a little song, and it's also kind of flirty, and, like, Spock is sort of, like, he's reacting to it in sort of an interesting way where he's kind of, like, playing along almost. But it doesn't seem like it's, like, super, like there's not a ton of sexual tension. It's more just like, this is a joke that these two people like to play out between each other, where she kind of, like, flirts, or, like, is a little coy with him, and he's like, oh, haha, like,
there's no moon on Vulcan.
Yes. So I think it's, like, I was very surprised because I'm like, oh, of course, like, female character. Especially in this episode where we have this female character who's kind of, like, preying on these various men. Female character, her introduction is immediately she's flirting, but then I was like, I think it's more than just, like, the flirtation. I think it's establishing this repartee between her and Spock that I'm curious to see if that kind of continues. Obviously, I don't. Like, how that plays out, but I, like, because I think I like their dynamic. It's, like, it's really funny. To me,
it is good.
So yeah.
Anyway. No, it's a good way. I think it's partly to introduce Spock too, right? Like, how else do you explain that he's this emotionless person? Well, not emotionless, but, like, suppresses his emotions.
Yes, and, like, doesn't react with his emotions.
Right. So it's a way to introduce that he is this different kind of person. But yeah, I think it's an interesting moment for her too, her character.
Yeah.
Like, we get a lot more than I remembered from her in this first episode. Really, the first two, as you said. Sulu's a botanist, which is crazy. That changes.
I was gonna say, okay.
I guess he's the botanist. It's very weird. He's just, like, hanging out and eating his lunch in the botany lab.
Right.
So that does change. And we're still missing a couple key...
Yes.
As I'm sure you are.
Yes.
Both Scotty and Chekhov.
In
this episode. Yeah. Chekhov doesn't arrive
Chekhov
for a while.
Has not appeared yet, so...
Yeah, he does not arrive for quite some time, actually, so... but as you said, like, the cast is super diverse. Like, compared to what else was on TV, it must have been surprising to see so many different, like, kinds of people on the show, which is very cool. And it makes up for a little bit of the sexual politics of the next episode, which we'll get to. But I loved the fact is, I think you said too, right? You felt like you knew the characters, but I feel like the characters work even though we don't get the traditional, like, pilot episode where, like, you explain how everyone is related to everyone and, like, all this sort of tropes or tics that they have. Like, it's not as in your face. Like, this conversation, I think, is the most pilot episode-y feel part of the whole episode between Spock and Uhura. Like, is the most one that feels the most like a pilot episode.
Establishing a relationship, right? Like, pilot episodes, if, like, always go out of their way to, like, if characters are going to be closely interacting with each other, a pilot episode will often, like, play up what the dynamic is going to be so that you can understand it through the rest of the series, and they don't have to keep, like, rehashing. Because other than that, you're really just dropped in.
Yeah, you're pretty much
you're it's captain's log, stardate, whatever. We're going down to the planet, and, like, that's like, okay, I'm here. we're in it. Like, there's truly Bones and his girlfriend, and
no, and I think that's why the episode works. It's just, like, you're tossed into it, and like, you get some of, like, I guess Kirk and Bones's, like, dynamic here, obviously, because they're talking to each other for a good chunk at the beginning of the episode, but I kind of like that it wasn't so heavy-handed with the, like, character trait development. Like, we get it, it's just not as in your face as, like, the typical pilot. I feel like episode works.
But again, I'm like, we have to think, we're watching this well after the fact. You obviously have are well versed in Star Trek, I at least know, right, what's the main premise of Star Trek and who I'm dealing with and what their various roles are. Trying to imagine watching this, like approaching this as a viewer who knows nothing, right? Here's a new TV show, enjoy. I can understand why critical reviews would have been baffled by it. Not just because, right, this is like it's like content or like what's the word? I don't know. It's like a premise that has not been explored before, but also, right, who is Captain Kirk? You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't have the same frame of reference that you or I have for it. So it is, I can understand why at the time someone watching it would have been like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was unusual for network TV then, because there's a lot of Westerns and like family drama, like you know, like there wasn't a ton of sci-fi TV. It was films. There were like the 50s are full of like sci-fi B movies that are of varying quality,
right?
But right, like this is totally different. Like even Lost in Space is a different kind of show, and by different I mean crappy. It's a different kind of show. Like the dynamics are different.
Right, it's not people who are like living, traveling, kind of like symbiotic with symbiotic's not the right word, but right, like space is the environment in which they live. Lost in Space is like we went to space and we got stuck. So yeah, very different, right? And then like the other TV, you know, you would have had like Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, like yeah.
Like it's a real mixed. Like I don't know, was Green Acres probably been on by now?
Probably.
Like that kind of stuff. So it's a very different show. And I mean, the funny thing is, right? I don't know how far you went in deep dive,
not
the production of the show and stuff, but Lucy from I Love Lucy, Desi Armand and
Lucille Ball.
Yeah, Lucille Ball had a production company. If you notice at the end, it says Desi Lou Productions.
Oh,
it's their production company.
Incredible.
They actually funded it after the networks weren't interested.
Great, I love that.
Yeah, which is crazy. But yeah, so Lucille Ball greenlit the show. So we have I Love Lucy to thank for the show.
Thank you, Lucille Ball.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's nothing else that would have really looked like this. But I will say, like the ensemble cast is great.
Yeah.
You get that sense right from the go.
Yes.
And like you'll see it throughout the rest of the series and like the movies.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about.
I was gonna say I sensed that right away. So I already talked about like Spock and Uhura. Like you can tell like they're just very comfortable with each other. But like especially watching William Shatner, he is enjoying himself. Yes. He's enjoying himself so much, but it feels so natural, like for the character. Like he truly just does have like like a weird on-screen like presence that I was not really expecting. Where like he's enjoying himself, but it just seems natural, and like his like chemistry with the other characters feels very natural, especially him and Leonard Nimoy together are like, even in that, by the time you hit episode 2, you're like, oh, okay, I get their whole dynamic.
Yeah. Right. Like it's believable that these people have been living together on a spaceship.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah. So yeah, it's a killer ensemble cast that in my mind, the rest of the shows never quite match.
Okay.
So
we'll see.
But that's my take on that. But maybe we should talk about the monster.
Yeah, our monster.
Nancy Crater. And her husband, Dr. Does he have a first name? I don't even remember.
I think they just call him Dr. Crater.
So as mentioned, right, we have this mysterious creature that's sucking all the salt out of people on the ship. They go down initially to visit Dr. Crater and Nancy Crater, who we find out immediately is Bones' old flame from like 10 years ago.
Yes.
Something. They're doing like research. That's the other thing. Like the show is kind of like a Western in space. Like Gene Roddenberry specifically said it was like Wagon Train to the Stars kind of thing. And we have that here with like this guy who's like kind of practicing frontier science.
Yes.
Like on this planet. Like we're not clear what he's doing out there.
No,
it's just like vibes.
No idea.
Yeah,
it's just vibes.
He's just like wandering around,
like living in a cave.
Yeah, it's like if Lewis and Clark was like alone.
Yeah.
And like just stayed out west.
Yes.
Like we're not sure what he's doing. We find out some of what he's been doing.
Yes.
But by the end of the episode. But initially it's he's there and like He's really cagey when they show up. He's like, we don't need a medic.
We don't want
need salt.
Yeah.
We need salt pills or salt tablets.
Yes,
it's so hot on this
planet.
Salt
so bad.
It's so fucking hot on this planet. And it looks hot. Everybody's sweating.
Oh my gosh. They would not let a man sweat on TV like that.
No, it's gotta be the lighting, right?
I think he's just sweaty.
But they're all sweaty,
William
though.
Shatner. William Shatner is the sweatiest.
Dr. Crater is also
Dr. Crater's pretty sweaty, but William Shatner is like immediately sweaty.
I wasn't sure that was like by design though.
Leonard Nimoy is wearing too much makeup, so you can't tell that he's sweaty.
Pancaked.
We need to talk about the makeup. It's driving me up a wall. This is one thing I actually really hate.
I feel like
they're trying to make him look like an alien. I do get that.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to, I think, make it like, oh, his features are just a little different than like human.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give him a lot of foundation. The makeup
does change as the show goes
because it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to make him super pale, right?
I don't know, because he's got eyeshadow.
Greenish. Yeah, well, the eyeshadow stays.
He looks a little greenish.
I think that's what they're going.
Especially I think we'll talk about the third episode, but by the third episode, and in Charlie, he looks really greenish. Yeah. But anyway,
sorry, but
they're so sweaty.
They're really sweaty. They're on this hot planet. There's sand everywhere.
Yep.
But he's really cagey about it, and then of course we realize there's something out there.
Something's
sucking all the salt.
Yes, and something weird. We know.
Yes.
There's something weird with Nancy right away because Bones sees her and she's like this beautiful young woman. And then Kirk sees her, and she's got all this gray hair. Yeah. Same woman, but like gray, a little older. And then the guy that they're with sees this like blonde bombshell and is like, "Oh, you look just like a prostitute that I met." Like in passing, they're just like, "Oh, she looks just like a woman from the Pleasure Planet." And Kirk's like, "Shh." Yeah, and I was like, "Say that,
man. Bro, be cool around."
Go stand outside. So then she goes outside and he sees her as this like, blonde hottie, follows her off.
Hey, sailor.
Yes, basically. Follows her off into the rocks, and then he dies.
The thing about this episode, I just want to say before we get further along, it's related to this though, but I love the editing, the cuts, like in this sequence, right, where we see three different women.
Yes.
And the way it's like framed, so like, right, Bones is looking at her, we see young. And then we switch to like a close up on Kirk's face, and then we switch back to her, and she looks old. And then, right, so it does this cool like
so it's like thing. Where you know who, where you know who is seeing her what way, because we cut to that person's face before cutting back to her. Yeah,
interestingly, we never know, I guess, what Dr. Crater sees.
He explains, but we never know what she looks like to him.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We never actually. I assume it's just Nancy, but.
His Nancy, right? His version of Nancy.
Older than Bones' version.
We don't know. She looks like his wife, right? Like that died, and we don't know what that person looks like. But he must also know. I mean, he obviously also knows that she's a shapeshifter because he has.
Yeah, he knows what she is.
He has no issue when she like appears as Bones' Nancy. He's like, oh, okay, right? Like he's not fazed when she looks any other way.
Right.
And he's the only one who's able to tell that she is like changing, or who she is like when she's changed, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm not totally clear on, is like how much of Bones' vision of her is just like, as he says later, this like romanticized vision versus what he actually sees versus what other people, like, I guess I'm trying to figure out how the Salt Vampire projects
once
the image to, like, can it do it?
I don't think so. I think you see what everyone else is seeing.
Okay. But it's standing in front of all four of them, right?
Yeah.
And they don't see the bombshell, but one guy does. And Kirk sees older, and Bones sees younger, and then Dr. Crater presumably sees whatever version of it.
Yeah, but then it's implied later that like other people are seeing the same.
Right. When she gets to the ship, it's very clear it's the same.
So
version.
there's something going on.
Some kind of control ability to,
and then Bones stops seeing her as a young woman once he like accepts that she's older.
Yeah. I don't know. I love how the episode uses editing to do this. But and generally the camera movement is very cool for a TV show, which we can talk about maybe in the next episode.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know. I'm just very excited watching this because
these are not the things that I'm tracking on, so you just go right ahead, my man.
Well, I don't know. I'm contrasting with like other old TV shows. Like usually it's very stagey and static. Like the camera sits somewhere, and the action happens in front of it. Whereas there's a lot of like camera movement.
Yes, it's not a walk and talk, but it's like a precursor to a walk and talk.
Like it's very clearly using like a
it's not filmed. I mean, it is filmed on a sound stage, but like inside of the Enterprise is like less sound stagey than watching something like my frame of reference for like television around this time would be Bewitched, and I Dream of Jeannie, which I used to watch on WGHN.
Yeah, that's just like a camera's plot down in front of the set, basically, and like you'll have close-ups, but like you don't have the camera.
You have your like four cameras, getting your different angles, but you know that the camera's not moving with the
Whereas here, like, and I think it's in the next episode too. There's a lot of like movement and like zooms in.
So you have a lot of like
dynamic.
It's shot in the close-up.
It's surprisingly.
Which I think is why the makeup is so distracting.
I think so. Yeah, but I think it makes like the interior of the ship more interesting. It's like, I don't know, comparing it to like the old Doctor Who episodes too.
Well, that's
so stagey. Yeah. So like there's literally a camera and people are like walking in front of it. And this like keeps your interest. So the Buffalo Exchange. So this is like, you remember the conversation they have about the Buffalo, right? So this is when they figure out that there's something not right with Nancy, or that Nancy isn't what she seems. So Kirk and Spock go down to the planet. Because they're trying to find Nancy. She's like wandered off, they think.
They think she's on the ship.
But she's on the ship disguised as this other crewman.
Yes, but they're scanning for her.
Right, and they're only seeing Dr. Cradle like walking around in circles, which is kind of funny.
Incredible.
Like they're just like,
what is this
Kirk is like eating his lunch, and Spock's like looking at the scanner. He's like, he's just walking around in this like 100-yard radius. So they go down. They have to like scare him by shooting at him. They stun him. And then they have this conversation about basically what Nancy is, right? And this is where we understand why Dr. Crater is like kind of protective of her, even though she's a salt vampire. He says that she's like the buffalo, right? So he compares it to this image of like the plains full of buffalo. So at one point there was a planet full of salt vampires.
Right. Where did they get their salt? Who knows?
Presumably from like Marie Callender's boxed meals.
Sure.
Just full
salt. All that sodium.
I don't know where they got it from. They don't go into. They don't explain that. But so he reveals that Nancy, his wife, died at some point.
Yes.
And this salt vampire has replaced her in his life, which we could unpack a little. But his whole reason for basically protecting her is that he says she's like the buffalo, right? This is the last.
Yes, the last of her kind.
And we shouldn't kill this creature, even if it is dangerous. It's only dangerous when it's hungry. Like if you give it salt,
it'll be fine.
Which is apparently what he's been doing for years.
Yes, just feeding it salt.
And like Kirk has an interesting line about it later on, where he's like, "I'm sure you loved having her around as like your what was it, like slave, lover, and something else."
Yes,
like he lists off a bunch of things. And it is a little odd that apparently, like, I guess the suggestion is that they're both lonely, though, right? Isn't that?
I think
they both get things from each other that they need. It's a very weird relationship.
Yeah, she gets the salt from him because she can't find it herself.
Yeah, I guess. Or there's like not much on the planet. It's very confusing.
Like, I don't know why she needs him.
Yeah. Only he can open that little jar with the salt tablets.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he needs her.
It's like the pickle jar.
Yeah,
I can't open the pickle jar.
Kind of by Kirk's, suggestion is like his need for her is maybe more like psychological and physical than
it's like psychosexual, I guess. Like it's clearly physical, but like I think it's also supposed to be emotional. Like he's on this planet by himself.
Yeah.
Like not so I think that's part of it. But I don't know. Yeah, and maybe get into the reveal too. Like what do you think about the whole monster of this episode and like
I loved her.
Yeah?
I loved her reveal.
I know the reveal's great, right?
I loved her look. Mm-hmm. Her vibe was very good.
So you want to talk about her look?
She's like I can't describe this.
Well, she's like wearing like a burlap sack.
That's kind of furry. There's some fuzziness to it, and her mouth is like a little like a sucker kind of like
a lamprey.
Yeah, like a lamprey with some teeth in it, and she's got those really sad eyes. Yeah. Like she looks sad.
She does.
She looks very sad. But
I I think we're supposed to feel bad for
her.
her.
That's what I thought too. Yeah. I think we're supposed to feel really bad for her. Especially because she like falls down, right? They shoot her, and then she falls down, and then she transforms back into Nancy, and is like Bones or whatever she calls him. Leonard.
Plum.
Yeah, and then she gets shot.
She gets shot
because she's trying to kill.
She's trying to basically kill anybody to get salt.
Yes, but at that point she's trying to kill Kirk.
Because she can't. We find out she can't go after Spock because his blood's different.
Yes,
because he's not human.
Yes,
so she can't get anything from him. So she just smacks him.
Yep, it's really good.
It's really good.
But yes, she's going after Kirk, and then Bones is the one who has to end up killing her.
He sees her for what she is.
Yes,
finally.
And then she transforms, and then. Plums, Bones, Leonard, whatever you want to call him, and then he shoots her. But yeah, I think you are supposed to feel really sad for her.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
Yeah,
because there's, at one point Dr. Crater says something to the effect of she's harmless if you just give her the pills, and this is when she's disguised as Bones in that meeting. With she's like, she's just hungry. She's just hungry. So yeah, I think the suggestion is that she's not malicious necessarily. Yes, it's just
But then the complicated thing is, right, they suggest she's not malicious. They say if you give her, her salt, she's fine. But there's, a few complicated, confusing things. First of all, why doesn't she just find the salt on the ship, know. Right?
Well, she does, eyeball the salt that Ensign Rand brings to Sulu. Right, why doesn't she...
So why doesn't she, find the salt, right? So, yes, okay... We are supposed to, I think, feel a little bad for her. But it's also more complicated than that because she's not totally sympathetic because she has killed a lot of people on the ship. And she's clearly, some sort of semi-intelligent. Yeah. I think the implication is right at the point of hunger, she's acting more on instinct, so it's more of an animal drive than right. So even if she is logical, that animal part of her is just trying to feed herself. But why doesn't she just find the salt tablets that they were supposed to bring them, or why don't they just give her salt tablets? So there's two things, right? It's killing her probably was the worst solution because there are two pretty easy solutions. Send her back down to the planet with a lot of salt. Or just put her in a room and fries with a lot of salt.
Right, because they say they're putting, salt licks out. Yeah. Seriously, they're putting salt licks out to try to attract her to them, which isn't working. So I guess part of my way of answering that confusion is that, basically she's a prisoner throughout this whole thing, right? Even before they arrive there, she's tethered to the doctor for the salt. So maybe that's why, rather than looking for the salt, she reacts the way she does.
Well, right,
as you said, it's animal. A return to right.
It's more animal, and maybe their conversation about the buffalo, right? Talking about her in the comparing her to right an animal that's going extinct, as opposed to I don't know what other comparison they would use, right? But it's it kind of pushes her into more of the animal. Yeah. As opposed to the intelligent, logical, human brain. And then also the way she looks when she's not impersonating human is much more animalistic than humans are animals, but you know what I mean, right? She looks much more like a furry creature than a human person. Yeah. Even though obviously she's bipedal and
it was by design because there was some discussion apparently about making her look like just a person, but just body painting, right, or something. And they decide no, they wanted to actually look totally different.
Yeah. So they make her and so then she does feel more sympathetic, more like a hunted creature, and not this kind of evil. And the title is also makes it confusing, right? Because it's called The Man Trap. Yeah. But it's not first of all, she's not always trying to trap men. And second of all, that's not like her primary objective. Like, she just wants salt. Which I can understand.
Is there like a McDonald's or something?
Someone's gotta give this gal a French fry.
I do get the salt. Okay. So how would you rate this episode? And our rating system will not make sense to you for a few episodes.
I was gonna say,
but how many triples out of 10 would you?
How many triples are in a 10?
Triples.
How many triples are in a 10?
No, how many? 1, 2 to 10 triples on the scale of triples.
Oh.
10 being the highest, aka
10
very good. 1 triple being the lowest.
I don't know.
You haven't seen enough?
I haven't seen enough. Okay. So
just take a guess.
7.
7 triples.
7 triples.
I think I would also give it a 7.
Okay. Yeah. 7 triples out of 10.
I like it a lot. I like the episode a lot. So, yeah. Okay. All right. It's unanimous for the Man Trap. 7 triples out of 10.
7 triples out of 10.
We recommend you watch it.
Yep.
And always make sure
it'll
you
hook
have your salt.
Always have salt. Yeah, always have whether salt. For yourself or to give to your sweetheart.
Speaking of demanding creatures and sweethearts, should we talk about Charlie X?
Yeah.
All right. September 15th, 1966. A lot about Vietnam again, and the civil rights debate again. But there is a front page piece about astronauts just doing astronaut things, which feels very 60s to me. Like, this would not be on the front page.
Yes, not at all.
So astronauts soar 850 miles, spin tethered with a Gina, which is apparently a spacecraft.
Great.
So this is Gemini 11. There's a pretty long article, like, where they talk about, let's see, Cape Kennedy. They took altitude record of 850 miles, took photographs of stars through an open hatch, and spun in tandem.
Oh, fun.
With a companion vehicle at the end of a 100-foot tether. In the spinning maneuver, the centrifugal force created a trace of artificial gravity in their otherwise weightless environment. Like, this is on the front page of the Times.
Yep, great.
A camera release from the spacecraft, or in the spacecraft cockpit, began to drift in the direction. So, like, there's all this discussion about low G and, like, how much fuel they use, their altitude. They get to see India and Borneo at the same time.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
This feels very like Space Race to me. Like, this would
would never.
There would.
I don't even know when someone goes into space anymore.
No, and like the Voyager probes are still out there doing shit, and like that's occasionally like in the back of the newspaper. Not gonna get that coverage now.
Nope.
Some fun stuff about Rhodesia, a really fucked up and bad place.
Really bad, yeah.
So that's going on right now, which I think, a Klan leader is convicted of contempt in Congress.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
more exciting, rights. I think, than a week before.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like there might be a piece on... Oh, no, it's not busing. It's just they're changing school buildings. But there's a lot about, like, race in particular in here. So... all of this is relevant, as you were saying, to Uhura and just the general tenor of the show. We mentioned like how diverse it appears.
Very.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's all the news that was fit to print on September 15th,
1966.
66. All right, let's see. Where is Charlie X? Okay, Charlie X, original series, episode number 8 in production order, but aired second. It's by DC Fontana, who will become a familiar name throughout the original series and the Next Generation.
Can't wait.
She wrote a number of episodes. Some of my favorites, actually, and then some stinkers. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but in general, we love it.
Where does this one fall, Aaron?
I think I don't hate this episode. It's not my favorite, but I don't hate it.
Okay.
The story's by Gene Roddenberry, which might explain some of the sexual politics, which we can talk about, but we might save a discussion of old Gene for a little further.
Okay.
Stardate 1533.6 for if you're keeping track at home. An adolescent human boy raised among aliens who have given him supernatural powers finds it impossible to return to normal human society.
Yep. That's putting it lightly.
Yeah, Charlie X, young man.
Nightmare.
Yeah, Charlie piece of shit. Actually, I don't know. I feel kind of bad for Charlie by the end. We can talk about that.
They really like to do this. They take these characters and they're bad, and then right at the very end, they're like, they're not as bad
as you think. When you know the whole story.
I don't like Charlie.
I don't like him, but I actually think the actor is pretty good for a child actor.
So annoying.
Yes, yeah.
Charlie is not a child actor.
I mean, he's like
Charlie's got to be 27 at least.
You think he's that old?
I don't know. He didn't look 17.
Yeah, he could be very young. I don't know. I think he plays the part well enough.
Yeah, I guess he's fine. I hate.
I mean, you're supposed to not like him.
Yeah, he sucks.
Yeah. So yeah, I have some thoughts, but maybe we can just start with general impressions.
Yeah, Charlie. I mean, we can give a little more. The synopsis is so brief.
It's really brief, yeah, which is fine.
Charlie is like picked up on this planet. The Antares. Yeah.
Something.
Some other ship, like a research vessel that's like affiliated with the Enterprise, finds him, brings him back, and he like doesn't understand how humans interact with each other. He doesn't know how to smile. He sees two guys slap each other on the ass and thinks that that's like an appropriate thing to do. It has to be like, scolded and told you can't just touch people on the butt, which is incredible that this even happens in the first place. When this ass slap happened initially between these two guys, like going to the gym or whatever, I was watching with my husband and I turned to him and I was like, did they just do like an NFL ass tap? And they did. And it was a plot device. It wasn't just casual.
There's a reason why the first gay fan fiction came out of the Star Trek.
Yeah, it's not surprising. That right now.
There's plenty of little things to be drawn.
Anyway, and so Charlie just has all these bumbles, but he's like a child. He's 17, but is like, don't make me mad, or I'll send you back where you belong. He just spends a lot of time kind of throwing tantrums and
I mean, I do love when they first drop him off how happy the other crew is to get rid of him.
Yeah, because he sucks.
I know, they're so obviously happy to get rid of him.
I liked the episode, but I hated Charlie.
Yeah, the character, you're not supposed to like him.
Yeah, he's
annoying. Just imagine a hormonal teen with god powers and
Yeah, a hormonal teen with god powers, but who also emotionally reacts to things like a 3-year-old.
Which makes sense given, I guess, what we learn about him.
Yes.
Right?
Right. He's had no emotional development.
Right.
But
there is a classic story about this, right? And I'm blanking on what it is. About a kid raised in the wild and
sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there is some sort of
who's smart but not emotionally intelligent.
He comes back to the civilized world or whatever and can't fit in.
Which is basically the problem with this kid, is he's smart but he has no emotional intelligence.
No. Right, he learns from the ship's tapes how to speak English.
Yes.
But he's basically raised by TV.
Yes.
maybe this isn't that far off of a portrait of what would happen if you just left a child to the TV it's its wire mother.
I mean, TV, but then also these this alien race that is speculated on. So Spock is basically at some point it's been said that these, I forget what the name of them is. I apologize.
I think they're the Antares.
Okay, I thought they started with an A.
Oh no, sorry, it's the Thasians. The
Antares is a ship. Okay, yeah. And he says at one point it's been rumored that the Thasians have incredible mind powers and all this junk, but no one really knows if they exist.
Right.
So they think he's been alone on this planet the whole time because there's been no evidence that the Thasians exist, even though there's these rumors about them. So you kind of are starting to sense they do, I think, build up their Monster of the Week mysteries really well, where you are, they do draw you in, and I just think they're they're very well constructed little mysteries, right? You don't really know, you know who the bad guy is, but only kind of, and you're figuring it out as the crew is figuring it out, and it's just a nice, I don't know, it's
a classic format, right? It works.
Yeah, but they do it well, I think. Yeah. And I love that in the first episode, Kirk says, "I hate mysteries." And I'm
give me a bellyache.
Yeah, every single you must be constantly
I love that
barfing because your life is solving mysteries, apparently. But yeah, I think they do a nice job of like hinting at, right, like Spock says, like, oh, the Thasians, and so it's like a little like breadcrumb, but you still don't really know what that means. Yeah, I think it's a well kind of set up plot. It just is sad that Charlie is so annoying. So tedious. Yeah. His little eyes.
I know, he rolls his eyes back.
He rolls his eyes back and like puts his head down, and I'm like, Jesus.
I know.
It's like having a
seizure. It is like Bewitched, but like scary.
Yeah. Or trying to be scary.
Yeah, well, right. Because in Bewitched, she just like...
Yeah.
Those are little, like...
Well, no, that's I Dream of Jeannie.
Or sorry, Bewitched,
Bewitched, she wiggles her nose. Right? Yeah, she twitches her nose.
So this is a more like creepy version. Oh, it's supposed to be creepy. Like, his eyes roll.
Yeah. But it's... I thought one thing that was interesting to me, I noticed like the clothes. We talked about set design, obviously. But like in this episode, I noticed there are like clothes more and like little set pieces.
Yes.
So there's a continuity issue with Kirk's shirt in this episode that was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, well spotted.
He's wearing a green kind of like wrap.
Yes.
Nice little like V-neck lime green wrap situation at the beginning. And then, like, same day, he's wearing a yellow shirt, and you're like, oh, okay, usual, whatever. Right. He changed back into his usual yellow. And then the next scene, he's back in the green.
Yeah.
So that, and, like, I was very interested in, on the walls of the Enterprise, are these kind of, like, pipe features. But they're just, like, they just, like, poke out a little, and a lot of them are framed, and they look a lot like Dada art, right? They look, and, like, and so I was sort of thinking, like, the whole, and I'm, like, the primary colors, right? It feels very, like, Bauhaus, right? So it is, right? It's, like, totally being influenced by sort of these, like, art movements of the time, I think. Very obviously, especially these like pipe, right? They don't go anywhere. They're literally just sticking out. A lot of them are like painted, framed in other colors. They really just do look like art pieces, as opposed to
yellow and blue, right?
Yeah, as opposed to set design. And then like I was obsessed with when they're kind of in the lounge, all like playing cards, or whatever. They're drinking out of those incredible glasses, right? It's so very, to us, 60s, it is, but it's also, like, so cool, right?
Yes, it looks cool.
It looks really cool.
Everything looks really cool.
Yeah, it was, I really enjoyed, like, the way kind of Charlie's costume changed, right? So, like, he starts, he's in a very sort of just, like, brown, plain, really basic clothes, presumably the clothes he was either found in or like that they gave him on the Antares. And then as he kind of evolves, right, because you see him sort of grow in power and like he learns to like want more and to learn and to use his powers to get more in a way that like he doesn't really at the very beginning.
Right. No, he does
not. And as he starts to kind of evolve, right, his clothes get more sophisticated, and by the time he like shows up on the bridge at the end when he's taken over the ship, he's in this like great like wrap top, and I love their little short pants. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with these pants and these boots.
It's a great look.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, and his outfit mimics that green.
Yes, the green that Kirk was wearing.
And he's like obsessed with Kirk this whole time.
He's obsessed with Kirk. He takes over the ship. Like he wants to be.
He's the only one he'll listen to.
Yes, yeah. So he's trying to emulate. Right,
it's super Freudian and Lacanian. Like this whole thing is like all about like child psychology, right? Because as you mentioned, when he first goes on the ship, he doesn't really want things, but he's super curious, right? He wants to meet everybody, he wants to see everything.
Yes, he's like, oh, you smile, like. Am I smiling right? Like he wants to learn to interact and be liked. And then he doesn't care about being liked. Then he just wants to be in charge. He wants people, he wants things, and he wants to have control. Because there's that weird fight scene. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
heaven help us with this fight scene. Talk about Freud.
I mean, there is Freud everywhere.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm not a Freudian expert by any stretch of the imagination, but like the whole sort of like development through this different stages, right? Like the stages of childhood, like attachment, where he like wants to emulate Kirk as the father, but then the father becomes a rival in his path to power, and like there's this way, right, where his infatuation with Rand like pits them, even though Kirk is not remotely romantically interested in her, but like because of the age thing, I guess, like there's that tension.
Yeah, because like that's his excuse. Is other than she's not interested in you, and you can't just like make a woman be interested in you.
No matter how many times you smack her on the butt.
That's right.
Wrong way to go, dude.
Right. What does he say? There's no right way to hit a woman.
Yeah. But he also says like, now, man, you can, which is very funny. It's like, man, you could give a wallop, but
there's no right way to hit a woman. And what was I gonna say? Right, but his his main reasoning, other than she's not interested in you, is like the age, right? She's far too old for you. And that's kind of, he leaves it at that, right? Yeah, it's not like I'm interested, so back off. It's just like she's too old and she doesn't like you,
right? But like
he doesn't like
reads,
that. He reads it as he wants him
blocking his access to.
Yeah, he's a cock block.
Yeah, but it is like the father thing, right? In the Freudian dynamic, it's like the father prevents you from realizing your sexual ambitions,
right? And then once he gets rid of Ensign Rand. Then it becomes the ship. Right. Yes. It's like he turns his, because that's what Kirk actually has power over. And so then he's like, oh, it wasn't really her. I have bigger ambitions. And so then he takes over the Enterprise.
And like Kirk's strongest attachment is to the ship.
Yes.
Rather than to a woman. So like there's an interesting dynamic there too. Because even in the is it this episode where Sulu's like, why do we call things... Oh, no, it's the first episode where he's in the botany, and he's just like, why do we call things inanimate objects by, like, nouns? Remember, he says, like, why do we call the ship her?
Yeah,
like, in this episode, we have, as you're saying, like, this very clear... Right. Like, rather than fighting over a woman, at the end, they're fighting over a ship. So, yeah, I think there is something, very, like, Freudian in terms of like childhood psychology. Like, it feels very
we see his ego develop, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And he has no super ego.
Yeah, there's no super
ego. Until kind of the end when he's like, don't make me go back to the Thasians, like then you
can't even touch them.
Right. Yeah. Then you sort of see like maybe a little
makes sense.
But then you're like, okay, well you're just a horny teen. Get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, you feel a little bit bad. I felt a little bit bad at the end for him. Because like he's going to this society where he's never gonna like be able to interact with these people, right? Like they cursed him with this power to keep him alive, which is what we learn about.
Yes.
Is that he crashes, he's the only survivor, so the Thasians give him their powers. Which are basically godlike. Yeah. So he can survive. Because they're like, we don't really want to take care of this weird little creature. Yes. So we'll just put the ability to take care of itself, I guess. Great. And then they come back and collect it when the galactic nanny cam goes off or something. Essentially. Yeah, the end is like quite literally Deus Ex. Yeah. But it's fine. Like, I don't know how else you'd end this episode.
I don't either. Because, like, you find out, I mean, we kind of glossed over this. They initially are going to bring him to, like, the nearest human space colony. And then they're like, we can't do that because look what he's doing to us. Like, we can't unleash this child on other humans. But then, he doesn't want to go back to where he came from because he can't even touch them. I don't actually feel bad for him because he annoyed me so much, but the actor is very convincing.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so that is
good.
Right. Yeah. He does a really good job of portraying that emotion to the point where I'm almost like, oh, I do feel bad, but I don't really, because he sucked and was trying to like sexually force himself on a woman.
Yeah, that part's not good.
Yeah.
It's icky for sure.
So get out of here. Go back to your I don't know, horny, lonely existence. I'm not into him. Even if the actor is
I think convincing. The end scene, like, he plays it well. Like, the distress is palpable.
Yes, very. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not like heartless, but I also was so annoyed at that point.
I think it would have played better if he'd been younger, and if they had removed the like they toned down the sexual angle a bit. Like if they had just made him like a literal toddler or like a little older, right?
A little older, maybe like a 12-year-old.
Old enough to be like,
old enough to know better,
right?
But not old enough, right, to be like sexually, super sexually interested.
Well, because they wouldn't be interested, right? Like, or they would be vaguely,
right? They wouldn't really understand.
Yeah, like the fixation would be the same, I guess.
And it is weird because there's a conversation that Kirk has with Bones where he's like, "You need to teach him about the birds and the bees," and he's like, "Well, he sees you as a dad," and then they like don't explain it to him. So it also kind of places partially the blame, or maybe tries to sort of partially place the blame on Kirk for not actually like, right when he's told he sees you as a father figure, he doesn't really try to like emulate that role at all.
I mean, I guess he kind of like the fight thing is,
but only by teaching him to fight and then sort of explaining to him like how to treat a woman, but not like the actual biology of.
Oh, I think they couldn't explain that.
Well, no. 6. I realize that, but he doesn't.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think this is supposed to be like. I think it's supposed to signal that without, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of the suggestion.
I think there's sort of an implication that Kirk doesn't necessarily do.
I mean, he definitely doesn't want to do it. It's clear that he would want Bones to do it.
All of it, not just. I mean, not just explain the birds and the bees, but he's not really interested in having this kid be so obsessed with him.
I mean, would you?
No, but the kid is obsessed with him, and maybe if he like, wasn't so begrudging about it, he would have. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. My take is if he'd been younger, it could have worked better. Just overall.
I think so.
But I don't hate the episode. I enjoy it. It's fine. It's
not my favorite. Hate it. I just didn't.
It's not my favorite.
Didn't like Charlie X.
No, I didn't care for Charlie.
Yeah, and then the Wizard of Oz shows up at the end.
He's green. He's green.
He looks just like the Wizard of Oz. I'd give it a 5. A 5 because the kid was annoying.
Yeah, I think a 5. I think it's a mid for me. I think I don't, like I said, I don't dislike it, but
no, I wasn't like okay, I'm not watching this. I'm not watching this anymore. No, I was fine with it. But I liked the little Uhura.
I like that part. Yeah, that scene was great.
At first, I was like, "What's happening?" And then I was like, "No, this is fun.
This is pretty fun.
This is great." Because I really like her chemistry with Spock and how like she seems to sort of just be like, "I'm gonna flirt with this guy because he's not gonna have any reaction," and he just sort of like is like, "Okay,
whatever.
I'll play my little instrument,
my Vulcan harp or whatever
like,
it is."
Like, again, it just seems like that's like an interaction that they've had before, right? Like that's just their relationship is this sort of like push and pull of like funny little. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like it. There's some good character moments throughout. I enjoy it. Like, I always like when Bones says something sarcastic or sassy, and there's always something he's saying sarcastic or sassy. I think the next episode's fun. We won't talk about it.
We won't talk about it, but I watched it.
For it. Yeah. So the next two, we have Where No Man Is Gonna Be For.
Yeah.
And The Naked Time.
The Naked Time.
It's not as sexy as you think it is.
I know.
But it's a fun one.
But it's a really fun episode title.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So we'll have plenty to talk about.
The Naked Time.
But I think that does it for our first foray, our first trip in the shuttlecraft down to planet episodes 1 and 2. I guess.
Wow.
I don't know.
We
rode the shuttlecraft this time. We usually say beam us back to the ship, but I think we'll have to fly back.
Why?
Because we took the shuttle down.
You established that.
But yeah, I think we're good to say goodbye.
I agree.
All right. Beam me up.
Beam me up.